Consistent self improvement, everybody. You are now listening to American gypC podcast. I'm your host, Classic, and I'm here with my co host.
gypC. And today we have Evan Kidd. He is award-winning filmmaker and host of Convincing Creatives podcast. His latest film, Panda Barrett, which was shot in 7 days, is now streaming on Amazon Video and Tubi TV. Welcome, Evan.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it, y'all.
It's a pleasure having you. So, to open up for us and listeners, tell us a little bit about, where you're from and how you got
Yeah.
into
So I'm
filming.
originally from Raleigh, North Carolina, and actually that's where I am today, and that's where we actually shot Panda Barrett. So North
Okay.
Carolina, born and raised, and I love making movies. I've always had this like passion for creative storytelling. I was always like watching movies growing up. My parents were like, "You're gonna fall into the screen. You're sitting so close to the screen." So I was always like watching movies, watching TV, and really what I took away from it was just this. Creative conversation that people were having through the medium, even fun shows, silly things like that. There was always a greater story if you looked for it. And so for me, like growing up, I went to film school when I was in college at ECU, East Carolina University. And then when I got out, like I kind of made it my mission to try to make these small passion projects, indie films, things like that, documentary as well. And I've always just had that curiosity to find other people's stories and help tell them. So I think that comes across a lot in really any project I try to make. So
Okay. To go back to what was your first camera and your first, experience
yeah.
with the camera and everything and learning? How was
So
that?
my original camera was the family VHS camera. So that was like probably 1995, 1996. I think I was like 4.
Mm.
And I remember just asking my dad, I was like, could I use the camera? And he was like, no, you're going to break it. Like, obviously cameras are expensive. And he was like, you're 4. Like, how do you even know how to use it? And I was like, well, could I tell you what to film if you won't let me film it? And he was like, all right, we'll do that. So he would like film things, just like the neighborhood, toys, just random things around the house. And then eventually I would like kind of direct these little sequences. And I didn't even know what I was doing at the time. I was like, could you film a big shot of the backyard and then this close up of this like tiger toy and like its face and its eyes and stuff? And I would just like make these stupid little stories as a kid. But I think little did I know that was kind of setting this weird foundation for me to kind of eventually look into like, oh, what is shot sequence and directing and cinematography and stuff like that. And I'm not going to say it was good because it was a 4-year-old just telling someone to shoot something. Like it was nonsense, but it just was cool to like think of things in that way. And obviously like when I got a lot older in like high school, I got like a little like point and shoot digital camera, and I was like playing with my friends and we'd like reenact things. And that was kind of when YouTube was coming around. And so we would do these little skits and stuff like that. And so yeah, those were kind of the original things that kind of launched everything else. So.
Okay. So back then, as far as when you were doing your first films, did you know that putting a whole film was as technical as it is today?
Oh no way. I had no clue. I mean, I was coming in completely new, and like especially like when I was a kid, obviously, but even like when I went to film school, like, we can jump ahead a bit too. And like, I remember the first few projects I made, I was like, oh, these are awful. Like, I just remember thinking like, this is not how I thought of it in my head. And a lot of it is like you don't have the budget, you don't have the professional, sets and things like that. You're just kind of making do. But then what I quickly realized was, okay, it's okay to make do, but while you're making do, like, maybe don't put the sci-fi project on the college campus. Maybe make like a story that's actually supposed to be on a college campus because that's what you have access to. And then like later on, we would do things in town and like in the woods and forests and stuff like that. And because there were kind of some rural areas that we wanted to take advantage of because the scenery was cool. And I was thinking, okay, well, what story actually lends itself to that environment? So like I always call myself kind of like a resource based filmmaker. So I do things very like outside the mainstream system, and I always try to like think, okay, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have a lot of budget, but what do I have? And I always try to like take, some inspiration from whatever's around me. So
Yeah. And I've lived in Atlanta a little bit, and I've messed around
yeah,
with a little film and stuff like that. So I definitely understand. And a lot of people, we're in LA, so
yeah,
we see a certain level of filming.
right,
And I've seen, of course, in Atlanta, a friend of ours, shout out to Brandon Dixon, he put out a Craigslist ad, pulled together a whole film crew in a day, and
yeah,
we were able to shoot a film.
yeah,
And I had a camera at the time. I had it's the same one, yeah, 70D,
70D.
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And he used my camera to film then, but I wasn't necessarily
yeah.
a filmmaker. Didn't know that it really took all of that. I just so happened to have a camera. Did you um do more services as a photographer or filmmaker as you
Yeah.
came along, or were you always into just filming like your own personal projects?
Definitely both. So like I've always been, writing and thinking and just trying to be engaged in my community. And I've told stories about like, and even in documentaries, because those you don't have to cast actors, you're just sort of putting yourself in the world as it exists and trying to capture a story
Okay.
over time. And so like, definitely always doing that, but always staying, looking for those projects, I did so much freelancing, I do some corporate work. I did a ton of music videos for a while, and those are fun because you usually get a little more creative control on some of that. So you kind of get to be a little more, creative than maybe like a wedding video or a car dealership video or something like that.
Right.
But I've done all of them, because it's like you got to pay the bills, you got to pay rent, and that's definitely a big part of it. Like, I don't make enough money on my own projects at all, like to pay all the bills. So, you have to kind of be able to juggle. And, for me, I actually put a lot of money sometimes back into my own projects to try to get them off the ground. It's not much, but it is a cycle. And so, for me, like I kind of look at it all as one thing because, what's nice is, some people might get bummed out because they're like, oh, I got to do this car dealership commercial. I'm not that passionate about it.
Yeah.
But you stay sharp on the camera skills, you stay sharp on the editing skills, and it just depends on your outlook. So I try to always have the outlook where, any project I touch, anything I do, it can help me improve as a filmmaker down the road for my next project. It's a personal project or even a commercial. So
Yeah. What's your dream camera to work with?
oh yeah. So it's funny, like I always loved the kind of cinema cameras. And for a while I was using, probably until 2019 actually, the Canon 6D. So it's very similar to that 70D I think you were talking about earlier. And really been rocking that for a while. And the screen had a big crack in it, and like half the pixels were dead. And I really just ran that thing until it couldn't work, because that's part of being a indie filmmaker. You don't really have a lot of money. And I was like, hey, as long as the camera's powering on, that's the camera I'm using. And again, I just used it until it still sort of works. But you get to that point where you're like filming something and it's becoming more of a headache than it's worth, and
Yeah.
you're like, all right, I got to invest in something new. And so that point came in 2019. I got a Blackmagic Pocket 4K cinema camera. And that thing was awesome because it's like the most budget version of it you can get. And like those cameras used to be huge. I mean, they used to be like this big,
Yeah.
and they've shrunk everything down into like this. And it has just a really nice form factor. It eats batteries in like 15 minutes though. So you have to have a ton of batteries because it's just too, 4K and high tech and all that.
Yeah.
But for planning it out, getting the batteries you need, the image quality blows my mind. And it blows my mind that it's relatively affordable now. I mean, even 5 years ago, that technology didn't exist. So, cameras are always like evolving really rapidly. So it's fascinating to watch. And, again, that thing's going to be out of date probably in another year or two, just because that's the way, like
Yeah.
technology moves, the iPhones move, everything is always marching forward. So,
You have a experience working with Sony cameras, like Sony 7, is it like
the
7SA,
A7.
A7? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I haven't used a lot of them personally. I was doing weddings a couple years ago,
Okay.
and this guy I was shooting weddings with, he was providing the gear, and he had one of those cameras. And what blew me away about it actually was how good it performed in low light environments. Cause, you know, a lot of cameras, you know, you need to have lighting a lot of times to really get the image as good as, you know, you see in the pictures on the advertisement. You know, a lot of times, especially if, you know, you're shooting at night or you're shooting in a room without, you know, just a little overhead light, you're not always going to get a great image. And that thing shot like almost what your eye could see in the dark. And so that's what was really cool. So,
yeah, that's pretty neat.
How do
yeah.
you bootstrap a film in 7 days? Like, what's your creative process?
That is the question. Like, yes, like it is challenging. Like it's not easy. And I think a lot of it comes down to like even when I first come up with an idea, like let's take Panda Bear, that's my most recent one. You know, me and my friend Damien, who goes by the you know, music name Camus Leonardo, he's a rapper in Durham, North Carolina, not too far from where I'm at. We originally were just going to do kind of what Panda Bear was as a music video for a new single he was doing. And then eventually, the more we brainstormed it, we said, oh, this is too much for a music video. Like, you know, we really wanted to take, you know, themes of mental health, themes of grief, themes of just like surrealism, like, you know, this panda bear following him around in a mascot costume. Like it's so weird. It's almost comical, but then the subject matter is so serious. So like we kind of wanted to do that juxtaposition and like flip everything on the expectation level. And the more we talked about it, the more we were like, I feel like this is, you know, evolving past the music video. So I went and wrote a script, and I remember telling him, I was like, I want to write a script that we can shoot here in our hometowns, you know, in Raleigh, in Durham, a couple other places in North Carolina on the weekends because we were all working jobs, and really just like not kill ourselves doing it. Cause, you know, I didn't want to write something with, you know, Star Wars level production because, you know, we're not going to have that. And, you know, we got to be realistic about it. But, you know, what we did have was a really crappy panda costume, and it was like falling apart. And we like embraced that as part of the aesthetic because it's like kind of this haunting image in the film. Like, I won't spoil
But
what
it
it
was
all
still a
means.
good suit,
Definitely.
though. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was a
thank
good
you. No, I
suit.
appreciate
Yeah,
that. And you know, but we had to like hold parts of it with duct tape because it was like falling off. And so like to us, it was so funny because like we do these super serious scenes, and then I would be like, all right, cut, and then we'd all just like burst out laughing because the panda bear's like thing is literally needed more duct tape to stay together. It was
yeah,
just like just that little logistical side of production.
yeah,
But it was a blast. And like again, just kind of coming back to your question, like it was so about just trying to keep things as realistic as we could, but in service to that mental health, you know, kind of more serious story that we were trying to tell about loss and grief. And you know, kind of that's the thing we realized is like a lot of those moments happen in little interactions, like the main character talking to his grandma. You kind of get that something's up based on his conversation in a couple different scenes. And like you don't need the big production budget for that. You really got to have good actors and a good script. So
yeah. Good energy.
Yeah, because these
right.
days you'll have great production and great CGI, but terrible story
Yeah,
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
were
it's all about the image and, you know, not about the story. And, you know, you can green screen anything. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, I love a Marvel movie here and there, but, you know, sometimes the audience, I feel like we want something to supplement that. Like, you know, that's like, I don't mean this as a bad thing. Like, that's like the McDonald's side of the industry. Like, you know, it's quick. You're going to enjoy it. Like, there's nothing wrong with McDonald's. Like, I literally had it the other day. It was like convenient. It was what I needed, and it fit that moment. But then there's other moments where you like, oh, I kind of want to have something different, you know, have a deeper thought process, a deeper conversation with, you know, the movie I'm watching or whatever.
yeah.
And so like that was our goal. Like, you know, we're not like the best thing since sliced bread at all. Like, you know, there's a lot of flaws. It's a couple $100 movie, but you know,
At least it's
again, I think
unpredictable.
right. Well, that was our
Yeah,
goal. You know, it's kind of like we tried to at least like be like, okay, well, we really gave it an attempt. Like, and I do feel like most people watching, like, they'll forgive you if it's like a low budget, if you keep them entertained throughout the story
yeah.
and kind of, and do you have something to say too? That's the other side of the coin.
You know, something that like for me, I don't really watch a lot of stuff, but
Yeah.
even certain movies, I can't be able to predict it. If I can predict it, you know, it's come on.
Right.
What's the point of this whole budget if it's the same
Right.
storyline of everything else?
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
Yeah.
And like I said, keeping the
Yeah.
audience's attention or the viewer's attention, whether it's just creative and original or because there are a
Yeah.
lot of different kind of films out here, original
Yeah. Yes.
films. Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite series on TV right now is Atlanta, and they're about to come back with a new season, I think next month actually. And one of the things I love about it is never predictable. Like you think an episode's going one way, and then by the end of the episode, there's surrealism. Sometimes there's horror elements. Like sometimes the whole genre of the show changes. Like you're like, oh, I think this is like a comedy, and then it's like, no, it's a drama this episode. It's a horror film this episode. It's a like there's a whole episode where everything's a commercial, and like it really flips the expectations on the head, and I love that. And I feel like we need more of that, like you were saying, because the audience, we've seen so many different shows and films at this point in our life that, and plus like Netflix, they're always pumping out something new every week. So rather than being the flavor of the week, it's like, how do you even stand out? So
Yeah. And that's pretty tough on, I guess, standing out these days, because a lot of the companies or the industries kind of want you to have something that's familiar, and if it's not
right.
familiar, then it's like, I don't know, it's risky. But
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
And that's what's hard about getting my work out there is like, I'm one person, like I said, I work other jobs, like my actors and my, crew members that we all work with. Like, we're doing so many different things. Like this is just one thing we're doing at any given point in time. And, we're doing it all independently. So that independent marketing, that word of mouth, talking to y'all on the podcast, doing like a behind the scenes YouTube series on my channel, like that's all the types of stuff we're doing, because there's not some person at Netflix like writing a check to us and throwing us out there on all the talk shows and whatnot.
right.
Like we're just trying to get the word out. And and I think that's the thing, because sometimes maybe it's not to say nothing good ever comes out of the big Netflix and HBO and all that, because there's some good stuff, no doubt. But I do think, like you said, a lot of times they don't want to take a risk, because for them, it's not really about the art form. It's more about like, what's the bottom line for revenue. And, that makes sense, because obviously everyone's got to eat, everyone's got bills.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, I feel like we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
And we also, like to give props to your film crew and everything for
Yeah,
being
they're amazing.
dedicated to working with you, because
Yes.
it takes a lot, even to have dedicated friends to
Yeah.
work with you. Yeah. You got to be
Yeah.
grateful for that.
Oh yeah, I mean, shout out to everyone, like my friends who came through to hold the boom pole. Like my brother let us film at his house, like
Yeah, that guy.
and I was like, "Do you mind actually holding the boom pole too?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, sure, I can." He's like, "I don't know what I'm doing." I'm like, "Just push that button. We got you. We'll figure it out." And like
Yeah.
that's so much of it. It's like you just get through and do what you can, and you hope it works out. So
Yeah.
And you released this during the pandemic, or is it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
How was
that
that?
that was wild. Yeah, it was wild. Like when we made it, we shot it like October, November of 2019. So right before, a couple months before the pandemic started.
Mhm.
And, the movie weirdly was about this guy who was, grieving a loss, super depressed, and he was alone. He was very isolated. And obviously, those were all themes that really came into play once the pandemic started. And so I was editing as everything was, shutting down in March of 2020. And I just remember thinking, I was like, this is so weird, like how this movie, even though it has nothing to do with the pandemic, like we would have never known at the time, like so many of just the little themes of it, the subtext of the film kind of felt similar. And so I remember once we released it, it was in 2020, and all the film festivals like went online. And so we did virtual stuff, which was dope, but at the same time, like we never got that like audience reaction of talking to people, because originally we were going to do a premiere at a local theater here,
Mm.
and Damien was going to perform because he wrote original music for the
Mm.
movie. And so it was going to be this really cool celebration. And obviously, we never got to do it. So we had to pivot and kind of do everything virtually, which again taught us more stuff. Like it kind of, I think, extended the life of the film, because it was virtual. We kind of were like, okay, this is going to be a slow burn rather than a quick thing, because we had to really generate the buzz a lot differently. And then once it went on Amazon, that was available to people in the public, and then Tubi as well. So like, you can watch it for free on Tubi, which is awesome. Like, that's the thing for me. Like, it's not even about making money. It's just like I want people to see the film. Like, I really mean that. And because we made it for such a specific reason. And I think there were just so many themes people could connect to. And like, I'm not gonna say it's gonna cure what we're all going through, because like we're all going through it, but I think it maybe just gives it a little more context maybe. So
Yeah. For our filmmaker listeners out there, what's the process of putting your work on Amazon?
yeah. So that's a very technical question. And like a lot of times, that actually was not even available to us filmmakers for a long time. And they made a program where they were like, you can submit if you have like the captions ready to go for your film, all the marketing materials, they have to be like formatted a certain way, posters, promo images, and then trailers and stuff like that. And then if you had all of that, and I think it had to be over a certain length, so I don't know that they would accept like really short films, then you could submit it on Prime Video Direct, and then you could, you had to wait a couple weeks, month or whatever, and they would review it, and then sometimes it would get accepted, other times they wouldn't. And so that's how we went about it. But Tubi's cool because that's a new platform, and
Was there
so it's
no
very up and
upfront fee
coming.
or anything? Just all submitting?
Yeah. So that one's
Oh,
like that one you have to go
that's
through a
interesting.
distributor. But once you do, it's free for people to watch. And so like way more people have seen our film on Tubi, because like let's be honest, like if you're just scrolling through Amazon, you do have to pay like $5 to rent Panda Barrett, which you can do. But
Yeah.
like if you've never heard of me or you've never heard of my cast and crew, then you're like, do I want to take a gamble on this film? Versus Tubi, it's just sitting there free to stream. All you do is watch like 2 pre-roll ads, and that's it. That's a little more accessible to people. And that's the thing, like that, you got to be realistic about it too. So I try to get my films out there to the right platform. I won't say Amazon is the wrong answer, because it's been dope because people have watched it there, and it has a bigger audience base from the whole world, so more people can get to it. But the ones who do find it on Tubi actually are people who watch a lot of indie films, and so that kind of plugs into a more niche audience. So it's all about like kind of thinking which audience lives on which platform, and then kind of how your film can work throughout them all. So
Okay. Yeah, I've never heard of Tubi until
Yeah.
today. So shout out to Tubi.
yeah, it's cool. Like it's new. Like you can get the like app for like the smart TVs and stuff. So it reminds me of Netflix, but it just doesn't have as many of the higher tier stuff. But they do have like some higher tier movies that I was actually kind of surprised to see on there. And everything's free. You don't need an account. There's no monthly fee. You just watch. Like it's like YouTube. You watch like 2 or 3 ads during the thing, and that's it. So.
What inspired you to get into podcasting?
Oh yeah. So what I kind of look at it as is it's another way to be creative for me. And so like, filmmaking is awesome, but it takes so many people and so much time and energy and work. And I'm not going to say podcasting is easier, but I like that I can make a podcast from, here in my room.
Yeah.
And I don't have to, call 20 people and, call restaurant, be like, can we film there for, 3 hours and, stuff like that. Which, again, that is what you got to do for a movie. But sometimes it's like, I just have thoughts in my head and I want to share it, and the podcast is a great way to do it. And then like you said at the beginning of the show, my podcast, it's called Convincing Creatives, and it's kind of this dialogue I have with other creative people, not even just filmmakers. There are filmmakers, but painters, writers, things like that. And it's just about how do you convince yourself to stay creative, and because sometimes that's a challenge. Like let's be
Yeah.
honest, sometimes you have writer's block. Sometimes I just don't want to do something, like you like the idea of it, but it's like, do I really want to jump through all the hoops to get to that final product? And then a lot of times, it's like I said, self-doubt, because you think, is anyone even going to care about this story? Like, I thought that so many times during Panda Barrett. I was like, this is the weirdest story. Like, it's about a depressed rapper who can't write a song, who's going through a grieving process, who has this like imaginary mascot panda following him around everywhere he goes. I'm like, are people even going to care about that? Like, people are going to look at that and be like, what even is that? And people did, but then it kind of
Yeah.
got them to watch the movie, because they were kind of confused and curious. And
Yeah, but
so
it's a film
it,
just like all the other films out there that's
yeah,
about everything else, So
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, exactly. And like, that was kind of the thing. And so, you know, uh I think too, like when we write, like, I write all my films as well as direct. Like, I've directed a couple other people's scripts too, but like by and large, I tend to write my own stuff majority of the time. And, when I'm writing, I always think about, how is this going to be perceived? Is anyone going to care? And that's just self-doubt, because like, again, you have to trust your vision at a certain point, because once you come up with the idea, you can pick it apart in your head all day long. Like,
Yeah.
and after a certain point, it stops being productive. Like, it can be productive if you're like, okay, well, maybe the characters should do this instead of this because it's more compelling for their narrative. Like, that's productive. But if you're just sitting there being like, does anyone care? Is this boring? Is this is this
Yeah.
that?
Turns to
It kind of
analysis
stops being
paralysis.
productive.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, there's always that saying too, that comparison is the thief of joy. And I always try to remember that, because it's like, if I'm comparing myself to every other filmmaker out there, I'm never going to make anything, because everything else is so good, like, so
Yeah.
you have to trust your own vision, and, eventually just kind of say like, okay, I want to see this through, and it's in service to something bigger than yourself. Because I feel like, again, like all the filmmakers and creatives and just really anything, like if you're chasing, fame and ego and money and this and that, like, you're probably not going to make it through in the long haul, because those things aren't going to sustain you for the long term as a creative person. Like, for me, it's that storytelling. I really always try to remember that. And it does keep me going even when it's challenging. So
Yeah.
Like, how do you get over, like when you're personally going through writer's block or imposter syndrome or whatever it may be? Like,
yeah.
how do you personally get past that?
That's a great question. I'm still figuring it out sometimes. I won't lie.
Of
Like,
course.
I think what's helped me is trying to create some sort of a schedule. So, like, I'm writing a new movie right now. And, when I started it a few months ago, I didn't really have a good schedule in place because, the pandemic, and, we're all just going through it. And, I was just kind of writing a little bit here, a little bit there when I got inspiration. And what I kind of saw was I would, work really hard for 2 or 3 hours, and I wouldn't touch it for like 3 months. And then I'd be like, that's not really consistent enough to get it where I want it to go. So really, it was actually during this last season of Convincing Creatives, I was talking to a couple different writers, and they were just saying, write 15 minutes a day. That's it. Don't overanalyze it. Just don't even be precious about it. Cause I think sometimes we all like hype
Hmm.
ourselves up too much. We're like, if I'm gonna write, I'm gonna light the candle and everything's just gonna, the mood's gonna strike, and like, that's great. But 9 times out of 10, it doesn't hit you with that like dramatic flair that you're expecting it to. It's
Yeah.
just sitting in a chair pushing buttons on a keyboard. And if you trust yourself, you've done this enough times, you know how to put the story on the page. And so that's the thing. I think just sitting down 15 minutes a day, just because you do that every day for a year, like, you really can write a book. You really can write like 2 or 3 scripts. And you can always go back and edit. Like, that's what I always tell myself, is like that first draft, they always call it like the vomit draft. You're just getting it out. Like, you can clean it up later. And that's the hard part, is like really just putting it down the first time. So
Yeah.
Yeah. To go back to I guess for our filmmaker audience, what is this first editing program that you started to work with, and what
Mhm.
do you use now?
yeah. So way back in the day, I actually used Windows Movie Maker. So that was like when I was in high school, and I would edit on that. And I had this old computer that would just freeze after I put more than like 10 clips in there. So everything I did, it had less than 10 clips, which I think is so funny, because I was
Yeah.
like, the moment I put the 11th clip in there, it always froze for some reason.
Mm.
So that was my first one. But like, when I really got into film school, I started with Final Cut. And Final Cut Pro was really what I think opened the door to like a lot of editing, because I also edit all my own stuff too. And editing is this fun process for me, because like, some people hate it. I actually really love it, because you get to really just sit with the final stuff you've already shot. You can't go back and do more takes, and you're just combing through it, and you're seeing what works and what doesn't. And especially in documentary, editing is really where you're shaping the story. Narrative, it gets a little bit more linear, because you've kind of already got a track, and you're just like pushing the train down the track. documentary, you can get so
Uh-oh. Hello? Uh-oh. We froze for a second.
creative.
Uh-oh. We froze up for a second. Sorry. You still there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
hear you now.
Okay, cool.
Not sure if there was our internet or what. Okay. But you were saying during the documentary, you can either filming or shooting a documentary or.
Yeah, there's so many ways you can go. So you can like cut very creatively, and so like a lot of times, audio track like from an, let's say, you can show the person talking, or if you could even go more creative with it and just show like B-roll of the things and then put that audio underneath. So you can really go about it a lot of different ways, and so like that's where I find editing's fun. It kind of reminds me of Tetris. It's like putting a puzzle together. So
Yeah.
Um,
Editing, I started with filming, and I guess even now I can't say I'm a big fan of it. I have a lot of stuff
yeah,
I wish I could edit and put together, old clips and stuff just for the fun of it. But yeah, I'm one of those people that have definitely gotten away from editing.
yeah.
I'm still
It,
trying to.
it can be tedious.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind editing, but I still can't get with Final Cut. Like I'm a Premiere Pro person. I got used to
Yeah,
that,
Yeah.
and it's like so hard to.
I do Final Cut still
Yeah.
with editing, but I also did a lot of Pro Tools work, music stuff. So that's
okay.
why, editing is also just as tedious as sitting down and recording a music project. So,
What's your favorite part of editing like audio? Because it is similar but also kind of different.
well, for me, it was more, I guess, recording as
Yeah,
a creator. I enjoy
yeah,
more stacking as and
got it.
creating, that form of audio. But I can't really say that got into a lot. I'm not really just a mixer all the way like
Oh,
that.
okay,
That just,
But
gotcha.
you do mix your own stuff. So.
yeah, I can, but it's more of just
Yeah,
mixing off, going off my ear and things like that. But I don't use Auto Tunes or anything
yeah,
like that. So when it comes to sound, I like acoustic,
yeah,
sound or more live type of sound when dealing with certain things. I still do, Beat Machine stuff as well,
yeah.
but it's hard to say. I'm taking a break from music right now, so I'm not doing any creating and stuff. It's
Got
been
it,
about a
got it.
year from now. Like I haven't written any songs, just taking a break. And it kind of
Yeah,
came from the whole pandemic thing as well, to where I took some time to analyze, and I played cello since I was 5, so music has always been there. So it was more of like all right, I'm gonna take a break and recharge and see, what else is or I want to do. And that's when the podcast thing kind of grew a whole
yeah,
lot more. So it was substituting that energy for me. The creative energy is still building as a musician.
right,
I will I'll probably end up doing a lot more video editing than um
right.
music over the year. That's
That's
dealing with
dope though. But
podcast
you're
stuff and
seeing,
then
yeah, you've seen the
uh,
transition though, right? Because
yeah.
that, like what you said about the pandemic, like I've definitely noticed that too with myself. Like the pandemic has sort of flipped the script because it's like I still have the same interests, but at the same time, like I realize now not everything has to be a film, because sometimes it can get out there quicker as a podcast or a book
Yeah.
or a blog, So
And
the writing and the creative, yeah,
the podcasting world is definitely going to be amazing. Even,
yeah,
it's as it grow, it's really a nice outlet. It allows me to take off the music maker hat, and I can put
yeah,
on the genuine conversation, human beings, and we,
yeah,
have a nice conversation.
yeah.
And
No, I can see it.
yeah. And before, sometimes people, they do take and I'm not sure if you probably get it in the film world too, because people don't understand what it really takes to make a film. But,
Right.
even for the small services as wedding, film my wedding. Yeah. Some people still don't understand the hard work, what it takes to get the shot. And even when you're working in real time like that, you can't run it back. So,
Mhm.
you know, you have to really have that skill. So a lot of people don't kind of value that. And even with musicians, they don't understand that, if you want me to perform 2 weeks from now, I have to practice, practice, practice so I can have it perfect when it's time
Yep.
to perform then. So it's not just, I show up and it's 30 minutes, an hour, it's nothing. So it's, the money. Why so much? It doesn't take that. You're just pressing the button. Those things are basically parallel. You're just
Yeah.
you're jamming, you're doing what you do. Just come do your thing
Right.
over here at my
Yeah.
house. It's like,
They
so
love to say that. It's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, you're just pushing buttons
yeah,
and fun. Like, it's, you would never say that to someone, working a business type job. You would never just say you're just pushing buttons. I hate when people do that to like creative professions.
yeah.
Right. You don't tell a lawyer, you're just talking to me right here. And
You're
Right.
just reading
you're
papers.
right.
Right. It's like, it can be fun. Like,
Yeah.
it's dope that we enjoy what we do. I would hope everyone enjoys what they do to some degree, but at the same time, like, there is an amount of preparation. Like, you have to be able to, like pre-production in film, you got to rehearse, you got to write, you got to, make those phone calls to the locations you're going to be in, make sure, you can even be there at the time you're going to come. And then you got
Yeah.
to, it's a production. Just getting 20 people to show up in one place at the same time. I mean, that's
Five.
always, yeah, 5
Getting
even,
5
yeah,
people to
2,
show up. Yeah.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And so, it's like you got to cross the T's and dot the I's, as they say. And it's all that logistical in addition to the creative that kind of makes what we all do here very unique, and like, I'm glad y'all see that. And like, and I definitely see it with y'all's podcast, because like, the conversation is genuine. Like, and these are the moments I feel like people crave, because both during pandemic times, when we were, still are to a degree, kind of isolated,
Yeah.
People crave that. And plus, people just look to that even in the most normal of times, because it's how you understand people better. Like, I think you have to have a genuine interest and a genuine empathy for people to do anything creative, because that's what film is to me. It's showing different people's lives. So
Yeah. And a lot of times when, a lot of these careers, you have to be able to communicate with each other. And over the past, the pandemic, communication has taken a hit with
right.
amongst, the general public. So, this is just, let's communicate without a title and, understand who we are without
Yep.
saying, oh, he got a mask on, I don't have a mask on, let me go this way. It's a whole different psychological thing, and you can see it just from walking through downtown
Mhm.
LA where we are. You see the lack of communication or the devalue of a person just because of something. Because,
Yeah. It's
that's
hard because society doesn't set us up to have a lot of conversations, because we're just programmed to like go to work, make money, do this. Like, they try. I mean, again, it's not like some grand conspiracy. It's just, it is what it is. Like, we're just from day one, kind of put on this track. And
yeah,
then, halfway through, you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm on the train. What am I doing here? Like, and so it's kind of up to you at that point to decide, how do I want to go about uh the time I have, and like get to know people better, get to understand why people are doing what they're doing, even if I don't agree with it. Like, it just helps you understand. And just we're all trying our best. Like, I think that's the thing that gets lost a lot of times.
yeah,
And again, like, not that film is going to save the world, but like, to me, I feel like it's what I am able to do in this very weird time, to like show that people do connect with one another. Like, I actually have this new documentary I'm working on. It's about a hearse festival. So like the things that take caskets to funerals, those types of cars.
yeah,
And it was happening at the beach of all places in North Carolina. So like, not what you would expect all that to be, a very like juxtaposition, flip on its head kind of thing. And I was thinking, like, it was actually at the premiere of Panda Bear. We did eventually go to a film festival about a year later, that was in Beaufort, North Carolina, at the beach. And both me and Damien, who's the lead in Panda Barrett, we met this guy at the film festival who was telling us at that same venue they were going to have this Hearst festival 3 weeks later. And both of us looked to each other and we were like, that could be a short documentary. And because we just wanted to get to know the people who got together to do this. And we went and talked to a bunch of people that day at the festival, and everyone talked about how, like, most people, like they'd see them at the gas station and be like, oh, what's wrong with you? Why do you drive that? That's creepy. That's morbid. And they were like, no, it's like a way to some people are into muscle cars and motorcycles. They're into that. So it is like this technical vehicle thing for them that they love, like fixing it up and stuff. But then on the other degree, they were saying it helps them kind of come to terms with life and death, which is a little philosophical. But they're like, at a certain point, you realize you're sitting in the front of one of them and you're not riding in the back, when you'll never know, because obviously that's where most people, not to be
Yeah.
morbid, but like, that is. And so it was actually kind of weirdly powerful, because I was like not expecting that type of a conversation. But and again, this is not something I even knew existed prior to hearing about the event. And I went over there with the camera, just out of my own element, and I just got to know so many people and perspectives, and it was just really dope. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I know, yeah, even with the podcast thing, I can, after putting a little thought into it, I look at it kind of as a way of how people can, well, we all have our little fears of where the hell we are right now in this
right.
world. So the podcasting, with it being, public speaking, that's what number one fear of in the world, public speaking. So
Mm,
for a lot of us to unconsciously turn to, we're going to publicly speak to each other and have a conversation.
right.
For me, I know, yeah, I've gotten better at
Oh
talking, and
yeah.
it's just
Me too. Yeah.
more confident in life,
Yeah.
communicating, human being. It's helped, with that fear, whatever fear it is, or with all of those fears. It definitely can help with that, or it has helped with that. And I know that's one of the reasons probably why this platform, or podcast, platform, some people, at least a lot of people over the past 2 years during the pandemic, have um, unconsciously probably just
Gravitated towards
gravitated
it.
towards it as a outlet of the fear of some kind.
That's a great observation, honestly, because I feel like you're right. A lot of people, even if you love public speaking, like a lot of people maybe didn't have an outlet to talk about stuff. And, I do feel like, it is important, because it helps you like organize things in your brain. Like, by talking them through, sometimes you're like, oh, that was a good idea, or that was a bad idea, or that was funny, or this was serious. And it just kind of helps you like categorize things, I think, sometimes, rather than just keeping it all bottled up.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges that you face with getting music for your projects, as far for film
Yeah.
projects?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Like Panda Barrett was unique because Damien is the pro there. Like, he's released several hip hop albums, and like he, made this song that was super awesome, and like it was very meta, because like in the movie, his character, which is like a slightly fictional version of himself, so it is kind of close to life actually. He's like literally writing it and like thinking of the beat in his head, and like different musical cues will play after moments in the film, and then those cues turns into parts of the beat, and then at the very end of the movie you hear the full song, and then you've actually kind of already heard it, but just in the little like genesis moments of it throughout. So that was actually one of my favorite music film kind of combinations that I've ever done, because it felt very organic. Like it felt like the way you get an idea, it's just a little thing, and then you just add to it and add to it and add to it, and then eventually you get the whole song.
Yeah.
um, but most films don't work that way. So a lot of times I'll find like Free Music Archive is a really great source, because it's all Creative Commons. You can use it for film, and it's a bunch of indie artists who want their stuff to be used that way. And so that's a really nice database to find stuff. And if you want to put stuff on YouTube, they have like the YouTube audio library. That's really helpful as well. um, so little things like that. I have worked with a friend of mine who composed stuff before, and that's awesome. And so I think it depends just who you know and who you can talk to. But even if you don't know anyone, like the Free Music Archive is a great resource. So
Okay. Yeah, I know. I'm having. We released a podcast soundtrack. It was just an
mm,
instrumental, kind of a quick, you know,
yeah.
release type of project. But I've had these. I guess I'll share these even for even other podcasters. Um, of course I'm gonna do another soundtrack, but I was thinking, or I have an idea that's growing to somehow be able to take some of my recordings from the from my guests
Yeah.
and kind of put them into the soundtrack and figure out a way to create royalties to where even guests can get royalties if once everything together to where
Yeah.
even the
That's cool.
podcast
Yeah.
guests can find a way to get royalties on
Yeah.
things.
So
But it's a
you'd be like
growing idea.
sampling audio moments and kind of mixing them with music. That's
Yeah,
cool. I like that.
yeah,
I like that. It reminds me of like the I'm sure y'all know about the lo-fi hip hop beats on YouTube where it's just a live
yeah,
Yeah.
stream. And then they sometimes will like sample like people talking from movies, little
yeah,
minute
that type of
Yeah.
clips.
thing. Yeah,
And it kind of enhances the beat a little bit because you'll
Mhm.
hear this like famous movie clip or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
So it always fun to find ways to play with audio. So
yeah. So even for creators like yourself that have podcasts, probably something neat that you want to do as well with your
yeah,
friend. You guys do a soundtrack for your podcast.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. That's awesome.
What's like your top 3 movies that like inspired you or you just love watching?
Ooh, see, I always have a hard time picking.
I think.
It's so hard. Like, and my taste is like way too like broad as well. So like, I love too many types of movies, so that makes it challenging. But I will say, I think like for me, back when I was younger, the Lord of the Rings movies came out, and I thought those were just like so cool because at the time there
Yeah.
was nothing like so epic in scale and just the
Production is
way they did
crazy.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just blew my mind. And I remember like for Christmas, my grandma got me one of them on DVD, and I actually didn't even have a DVD player. And me and my brother got a PS2, and so we realized we could play it on the PS2, and we watched it. And then after the movie, it went back to like the menu and it said bonus features, and I was like, "What's that?" Because before that, all I had was VHS,
Yeah.
and I watched that, and then there was this whole like series of videos on the disc, and this was like 2003, 2002, of the director on set walking you through everything. So it was
Yeah.
like
Wow.
all behind the scenes showing you how it was made. And again, me in like elementary school, middle school, watching that multiple times because I would just watch that every few weeks on repeat. I would just be like, oh, this is so cool. And like that opened my eyes to filmmaking. So I always have a special spot for Lord of the Rings
Mm.
in my heart.
Yeah.
I also love Short Term 12. That's a more recent movie. It's by Destin Daniel Cretton, and I want to say it's on like Netflix and Amazon. So if y'all have that, definitely give it a watch. But it's a really powerful drama about a group home and the people who are kind of the adults in charge who kind of help everyone out. And you just see these interweaving stories of different people, their problems, their solutions. All the kids have different things going on in their lives, and it's just really powerful. And it really opened my eyes to just like how well written a drama can be, because like every character in that movie is just like so good. And you'll laugh, you'll cry, it's just got it all. So that would probably be another one I really like. So
Okay. You got a third?
hmm. That's, I would say maybe, gosh, that's such a hard one.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
Parasite. I love Parasite from a few
Parasite.
years ago.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
It's a Korean film. It is so good. It is wherever you think the film is going in the first half, it has like one of the best twists I've ever seen. I won't spoil it, but I remember watching that movie. It's a thriller, and I just remember being like so far on the edge of my seat, like I just about fell off. Like it is that engaging. Like I remember I was like so uncomfortable watching the movie, but at the same time, I was like, I can't stop watching this movie.
There was a film on Netflix we recently watched when we visited Mississippi, and it's an anime film.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name
Green
of
Snake or something?
Green Snake,
I
maybe.
think so.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
But with you saying something that kept you on the edge,
Yeah.
that film, because I guess without it spoiling, it's like the world
Yeah.
that they're in is always changing.
Okay.
So when the action is done and they're relaxing, something else changes. So
Right.
It's always moving.
And you're trying
But
to process the underlying like message behind it at the same time, but there's a lot of action going on too.
yes,
Yeah.
but it was, I don't like I
that.
said, I don't really watch a lot of films. Some of them that slide by me, that was like one that just happened to come by, and it's maybe one out of like maybe the first 4 movie I've watched in maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
And it's
No,
just
I know what you
random.
mean. Like
Yeah.
I love movies, and sometimes I miss out on all the latest and greatest because there's just so much to watch. Like it's so hard to keep track of everything. And
It's
I'll
a
put
lot.
things in the queue, but then I'll go back like 6 months later and be like, oh yeah, I forgot I put that in the queue. I need to watch that. And so I always am very behind on my watch list. So.
And I'm sure it's the same for you. Sometimes it's, as when I was in prime musician, it's hard to listen to a song without wanting to go and make your own song.
Right.
So I can imagine you watching something and you get inspired.
You know
like,
very well.
I want to go and make a film.
It is so true. Like it's so true. Like I'll watch something and then my brain, it's like half of it will watch it for entertainment and the other half will be like picking apart cinematography and sound.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, stop, I just want to watch it for entertainment.
Yes, man. Yeah, that's hard. That's hard for me with film now. Because it's just,
it can be fun sometimes because it is fun to watch it that way, but it's like it's hard to watch something for entertainment and technical at the same time. But I feel like I've just got used to it at this point.
Yeah, once you learn the secrets of behind the scenes
Yep.
and how it's filmed and stuff like that, and who wrote it and what the actor was probably thinking, and
yeah,
it's definitely hard to watch films the same.
Yeah.
But before we get ready to close it out, any links and projects that you're working on that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thank y'all for having me. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for making the time.
We appreciate you.
And then, yeah, y'all are doing great work. Like, please keep it up. I've really enjoyed keeping up with y'all on the podcast. And yeah, I would just say to anyone listening, check out Panda Barrett. It's on Amazon and it's on Tubi for free, so you can watch it there. Just download the app like on smart TV, and you can actually, I think, watch it on like a browser too on Tubi. But yeah, check out Panda Barrett, and then all my stuff is on rocksetproductions.com. And then Convincing Creatives is my podcast. So we're actually getting ready to do a new season later this year. So
okay, if you're ever in downtown LA or in LA, California, definitely hit us up and come by for an in studio recording. Yeah, we
I
have
would love that.
multiple mics, so keep us in mind if you ever in the area.
Yeah, we'll
it.
do. I hope to be sometime doing a film or doing a film festival, so that'd be dope.
They have them going all the time out here as well.
Yes. Oh yes.
It's like the only place I've been in, you're just walking down the street and they're yelling, cut. You're like, oh, sorry.
It's like everyday normal over there.
Like, why is there a tray of food in the sidewalk? Oh, it's a film set. Never mind.
Here in North Carolina, we when we did Panda Barrett, we had some guy like driving his truck down the road, and we were filming on the country road, for the scene.
Yeah.
And he like came in reverse back and was like, what are you doing? Because we just were in this field in a panda bear costume, and I was like, making a movie, and he was like, that makes sense. And then
yeah. But thank you to our listeners.
Yeah. And you can find the podcast at americangypsy.com. And we also have consistent self-improvement merch at luamlee.com. And we have music on all major platforms.
You can find some of my music under Classic Carpenter, KLACCIK, Carpenter, CARPENTA. And that's on Spotify, iTunes, Tidal, YouTube, all major platforms. I stumble over that every time. Not really stumble, but that's the layout. Thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you again. And consistent self-improvement, everybody, and peace.
Peace.